in the game now. Foot on the gas, can slow down. No, my team, we holding it down. We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change.
This is the Clean Hits Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Brad. We got Corey, we got Trent, and we're going to try something a little new in a weekly segment we're going to be doing leading up to the draft and free agency. It's going to be a little bit of a quick hits, this or that. It's going to be kind of like a debate. So we're going to force our co-hosts, guests who we may have on, anybody willing to go and defend their stance on some terrible trade proposals or kind of defending one draft pick over another, just to kind of feed the off season and get the chatter going. Because I mean, I love talking trades. We were just talking about different trade proposals and roster moves for the past hour before we hit the record button. And this is one of my favorite times of the year. And over at the Clean Hits Discord, which you can join at discord.cleanhitshockey.com, under the Utah Hockey Mammoth, I'm sorry, I need to get used to it, the Mammoth Trade channel, there's been a lot of chatter about the Islanders, who hold the first overall pick, are kind of at a crossroads now of rebuilding and were just gifted that lotto win, or to kind of keep some of their core like Horvat, Barzal, and a particular name, Noah Dobson, and try to build around that with maybe a quick retool. With a new GM coming in the fray, it could be going straight towards that rebuild, especially with kind of a legendary draft next year. And there seems to be a lot of chatter about this trade proposal. Utah Mammoth would be sending over the 4th overall pick to receive Noah Dobson. And there would probably be some pieces coming back over to the Utah side to maybe balance it out a little bit. But we're going to kind of strip it down from all of the extras that may need to be thrown in there to make this work. And let's just talk about these core pieces and which side you would take. So I'm going to kind of introduce this a little bit more about the player and some other recent 4th overall draft picks in the NHL. And then Corey's going to be kind of pushing for the Noah Dobson side, where Trent's going to say, no, we are absolutely keeping that 4th overall pick. And again, tune in every week because we're going to have different versions of these. Send us a message if you want to come join and do one of these yourselves and try to debate against your stance on a certain player. We're definitely going to be inviting guests on to do so. And let's get started. So, first of all, I'd like to bring up Noah Dobson's stat lines here. This is a kid who was drafted 12th overall by the New York Islanders in the 2018 draft. This was a kind of a draft year that was similar to the 2024 draft. Lots of defensemen sprinkled with some top end forwards. And as you can see, he kind of caps out at a 70-point season, which is very, very impressive for a defenseman, especially on a team like the Islanders, who have been relatively low on the goals for per game rankings. Now, on the flip side here, I just kind of want to show the quality of players that you can get from a 4th overall pick. If you're not watching on YouTube, here are the last 16 4th overall picks that have been selected last year. Caden Lindstrom, the big center who went to Columbus. Will Smith, who may be a center or a top-line winger to San Jose the year before that. We have Shane Wright, Luke Hughes, Lucas Raymond, Bowen Byram, Brady Tkachuk, Cale Makar, Jesse Puljujarvi, Mitch Marner, Sam Bennett, Seth Jones, Griffin Reinhart, Adam Larson, Ryan Johansson, and Evander Kane as those last 16. I mean, only 2 of those are outright bust. And then maybe 2 other of those names are kind of more on that second pairing, second line type player. There are some truly elite names in that fold, though. So, who wants to start?
I mean, you look at Noah Dobson, 70 points last year. I don't think this year was a write-off, but so many things went wrong for the New York Islanders. They're such an older team. They brought in Patrick Waugh mid-season last year, and it's been tough there, right? And they're just kind of hanging on. And what a win for them to go from 10 or 11 in the lottery to up to number 1 and really kick off a much-needed rebuild, hanging on there for years with players in their mid to late 30s. And now maybe a rebuild can start in New York, a new era. It looks like they're going to have a new general manager here in the next couple of days, if not weeks. So, I mean, maybe really accelerate that rebuild by moving Noah Dobson. He is a right shot, 25-year-old defenseman, 1 season removed from 70 points. That's right in the same stratosphere as guys like Adam Fox, Victor Hedman. He is a restricted free agent, so there's an opportunity to put together a contract of your liking. It didn't look like things were going very well with New York there because he fired his agent mid-season. Obviously, negotiations with Lamoriello were not going in the direction that they wanted, or he would have had an extension in place. Rumored to be about $10 million. May sound a little high, but again, we're moving into this new era with the cap where it's going to be $115 million. And if you can get your number 1 defenseman under contract for less than 10% of the cap, I think that's huge. Look at Mikhail Sergachev, $8.5 million. He had a great year. He showed that he's a number 1 defenseman, but he's a left shot too. So the opportunity to potentially bring him into Utah, where you could put those two together and just dominate on the ice. Like, it goes back to, I think of like Niedermeyer and Pronger back with that Ducks team, right? Or you could split them apart where you would have Sergachev on one pair, you would have Dobson on the other, and for 45 minutes of a hockey game, you have a number 1 defenseman on the ice, you're going to win a lot of hockey games.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Bill Armstrong used to his advantage with the St. Louis Blues too, right? Mm-hmm. With Colton Parayko and Alex Pietrangelo. So a little bit of precedent there in Bill Armstrong's wheelhouse. Sorry for interrupting, Brad. What were you saying?
No, and this would definitely be that strategy of going all in now, pushing the chips in to make sure they are potentially making the playoffs next season and beyond. And you add a piece like Noah Dobson, it probably is going to shake loose somebody else at right defense, which means you could probably turn that asset over for, another winger, top 6 winger, top 6 center, a different asset in that capability.
That sounds like Sean Durzi becoming available. He's signed to a pretty good number, $6 million. I know he had a bit of a rough season with the injury there, but kind of came on late toward after his return. Power play specialist, but I think underrated defensively. And again, $6 million for a top 4 right shot defenseman and $115 million cap. I think that's huge. So if you moved him out for some forward help, you would go on the right side. You would have Dobson, you would have Marino, you would have Kesselring, and you would have Maverick Lamoureux, who would probably get some spot duty and probably become a full-time guy once John Marino's contract is up 2 years from now. And also on that right side, you'd have Dobson, you'd have Kesselring, you want to look at the whole defense core. Noah Dobson at 6'4" would be one of the smallest guys. Yeah. Right? With Simashev at 6'7", at what's Sergachev, 6'3", so he's a little taller than him.
Yeah.
You would have Michael Kesselring, who's 6'5", right? Big. Bill Armstrong likes his big defenseman, and 6'4" being not one of the bigger guys.
The top 4, potentially the entire defense core, depending on who eventually fits in at 3, the third left defense position. All right,
they're all solid 2-way guys.
Yes, especially if you move out Jersey, you pretty much have guys who both can pot some goals. Well, we'll see about Simashev, but yeah, very, very interesting. Would be a very, very tough team to play against. We saw how defense can win with teams like Vegas, who have had all-star blue lines in the past that have pretty much allowed them to plug and play whoever in net too. I mean, Adin Hill was not the goaltender that you think of him now. That first year he was with Vegas, old ex-Arizona Coyote, actually, who got traded to San Jose, kind of floundered out there, and then really found a home in Vegas, who had a big, burly, tough defense in front of him. All right. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good points there. Trent, let's hear some initial pitches of why on earth you would never trade around the 4th overall pick for Noah Dobson. Take it away.
Well, I can't. Corey convinced me, so episode over. I'm sorry, we're doing it. No. I'm just kidding. I do, though. I see the vision. The great big blue line, right? Two-way mobile giant defenseman, depth and top end. It can cover for so much. The old adage, defense wins championships, may be true. I don't know if it is, but if it is true, we would definitely be there. We've got Karel Vizmelka, who's also quite big, and Michael Robel coming up, who's even bigger. Probably going to end up the biggest goalie in the league whenever he does arrive. So I really like the concept of having that security blanket of a giant defensive core that's highly mobile, two-way, and dependable. I struggle a little bit, not with Noah Dobson as a player, right? I love the player. I loved him when he was playing for the Bathurst Titans. Who incidentally just got relocated. So RIP to the Teton. They're in Newfoundland now. They're going to be the regiment. So I remember his draft year well. That was the year we ended up picking Barrett Hayton, ironically.
Yep.
And we were rumored to be around Dobson for quite some of that time. So that was a great year for defensemen. Evan Bouchard went that year. Quinn Hughes went that year. It was a great year for defensemen. Conversely, I feel like this year's a pretty darn good year for centers at 4. And when you add Noah Dobson to the mix, you definitely can see the vision for that blue line of the future. But then when you start to look up front, I see our best players, Clayton Keller. I see one of our bright young stars is Dylan Gunther. I see Tisha Ginla and Daniil Boot coming. I see a bright future at winger, but then when I look at center, I see Logan Cooley and then Barrett Hayton. Cole Baudouin's coming up. Jack McBain did an admirable job filling in the bottom 6 there last season. But I have to wonder, is Cooley and Hayton enough of a 1-2 punch to get it done long term? Are we pulling from an area of weakness in terms of center depth, given that at number 4, we could see any one of Misa, Desnoyers, Higgins, Frundell, heck, even Jake O'Brien would immediately be our best center prospect and maybe one of our best prospects in the system. There's a lot of centers right there for the taking at number 4 overall. So if you look at this from the perspective of removing a center of the future to add yet another bright young defenseman, is the scale getting a little out of whack there? It's my feeling that it is. It's my feeling that we're leaning too heavily onto one side. We're not creating a well-rounded team identity as well as we are creating a well-rounded defensive identity. And then there's the idea that it's not really just going to cost us number 4 overall, if you think about it. We just signed Sean Durzi to a long-term, reasonable contract. If you add Noah Dobson, that contract's going to be a lot more. A lot more. What is Durzi making? $6 million?
6, yeah.
Would it be completely out of the realm of the possibility that Dobson wants towards 12? Almost twice as much?
He wanted 10 from the Islanders. I think 10 is a lot more accurate than 12, but
okay.
But still, so that's a big chunk.
Not double Durzi's amount, but greater than 50% more than Durzi, right?
Yeah.
So you add Dobson, and then suddenly you not only have a $10 million Dobson, but you have a $6 million Durzi who doesn't have any power play minutes. Because last I checked, this team uses 2 defensemen on the power play, right? So we've got Sergachev, we've got Dobson. What value does Sean Durzi have to the team if he's not on the power play? Is he worth $6 million if he can't get power play minutes?
No,
probably not, right? So then you can turn around and trade him, and you can recoup some of the assets you lost in that 4th overall. But he was acquired for just a 2nd round pick. I'm sure that his value's gone up, but even if it's doubled, you're getting 2 2nd round picks. Or that amount of value, which isn't a great return. So Sean Durzi, with a very injury limited year where his availability and effectiveness were both depressed, is an asset that you're selling low on just so that you can buy high on an asset in Dobson that you don't really need as much as you want. And you're not creating, but leaving the existing big hole down the middle that you had a God-given opportunity to fill by winning the draft lottery and moving right up into the area where in that rarefied air is the only place you can really find top two-line centers available is at the draft, because they almost never become available under any other circumstance. So from my perspective, I want to seek that balance of the roster, and I want to be thinking about not just next year and not just whatever cheat codes we can punch in to make the playoffs, but I want to think about, like Bill Armstrong says, stacking good player on top of good player on top of good player,
waiting for this.
Having this sustained excellence over the long haul, not just to open our window sooner for playoff contention, but to extend our window in the future for championship contention.
Who says no to 4th overall and Dursey for Dobson and Horvat?
I mean, I would.
Oh,
not
man.
me. I don't say no to that. I don't say no to that. I don't think. What
New York
a good
uses
question.
number 4 to pick Long Islander Hagens.
They'd have Schaefer and Hagens instead of Dobson, and then they would be right in the mix of the McKenna lottery.
Yes.
Because if they moved out Horvat and Dobson for 2 kids who aren't even going to play on the team next year, they're going to have the best odds of winning Gavin McKenna, pretty much.
And they have a new GM coming in who's not connected to any of these players. He didn't sign any of these contracts. He doesn't have to feel obligated to keep any of them. So what a way to kick off a rebuild. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. His clock.
So you bring in Schaefer, you bring in Hagens, you bring in Sean Dursey, who's 25 years old, 26 years old. You put yourself in a pretty good position to get McKenna a year from now, because you're going to take a step back defensively. You're going to take a step back offensively without Horvat, because there's not a lot of offense to begin with.
And Dursey still kind of fits in with the Barzell age range there. So it's not like that. It's not that crazy. And then Hagens and Schaefer probably won't be impact players in the NHL next year, but the year after they might be. And Gavin McKenna certainly will be the year after. Even if they don't get McKenna, it's a very good draft at the top, full of like pretty big
top 3
type guys.
So you go Cooley, Horvat, Hayton, and Stenlund down the middle. And then you just have to go in free agency and get that. Do you need a winger? Because you'd have Gunther, you'd have Schmaltz, you would have Doan and Kerfoot on the right, and then on the left you could have Keller, Daniil Boot, Lawson Krause, and Jack McBain.
Schmaltz with Horvat, maybe a beautiful little combo. And real quickly, before all the angry Islander fans who are maybe watching this are typing up their response of how this could never happen, there definitely can be pieces that balance this out too. So it's kind of more of a very big, broad 4th overall plus Dursey for Horvat and Dobson with added parts. I mean, there's still plenty of picks on the Utah side and other prospects to balance it out if needed, because I do think this weighs a little bit heavy for Utah personally.
Sure, it does. I agree with that.
The only thing is, here would be one counterpoint for it that I'm going to make for Trent. You have essentially nipped the rest of the rebuild in the bud at that point, because you have ended the top quality prospects that you're going to be bringing in with high draft picks. That doesn't mean you can't find a gem in later rounds as the team starts to compete. Doesn't mean you can't find a gem in the late first. Pasternak was drafted in the 20s. But it's much more unlikely. So you are really kind of ending this rebuild with your last 2 first-round picks being Tige and Cole Baudouin. And it is a bookend of Gunther and then that Tige pick. So I would say, as far as flashy blue chip prospects, immediately after being drafted, that is over. So the prospect pool isn't dried up, but it's not, the pipeline is not going to be as flowing, if you will.
I don't imagine New York would do Dobson and Barzal, right, for that same package for Four and Dursey.
No, because
here's a question then. No, I don't think so either. I think you're right, Brad. Go ahead, Brad.
No, yeah. And Horvat, by the way, Horvat just turned 30. He got 6 years left going into next year. 6 years, 8.5. So takes him to 36. Barzal. It sounds like a lot, but any of these other free agents are pushing 30. Like, do you want to do Horvat for 8.5, or do you want to do Nick Ehlers for 10, who's a wing and he's small?
100% Horvat.
And if he doesn't score, he's
and it's only 1 year
but
older.
You hit the nail on the head. Why he would A, potentially be available in a deal like this, and B, why it makes sense for us rather than going UFA. So I think that makes some sense, right? The fact that they wouldn't do Barzal, but they would do Horvat. I think Horvat makes a lot of sense for us. Barzal is kind of like a Schmaltz upgrade. I'd want Schmaltz to go the other way if that happened, because they're pretty similar in a lot of ways.
And he's young enough where you can still kind of rebuild around him. I don't know if he's
he's 28
piece, but if you can do a kind of a rebuild on the fly here between this draft and next draft, and potentially get yourself a McKenna or at least a high pick, because New York's not going to be very good. I know they were kind of pushing for a playoff spot this year, but like, look at their team. Laundersley, he's 34. Paul Mary, he's a free agent. He's 34. Peugeot, 32. Declare, I don't even know if he's playing. Pierre Engvall, probably one of the worst contracts in the league, 28. Casey Zizakis, 34. Defense, Pulak, 30. Pelech, 30. Dobson, 25. Scott Mayfield, 32. Romanov, 25. Also an RFA. Mike Riley, 31. He missed a bunch of time. Perunovic, RFA, 26. Sorokin, 29. He missed some time with injury. Varlamov, I don't know if he's coming back.
No time like the present for them to start that rebuild. Yeah, they got to. Yeah. They got to.
And who knows
their assets now.
Yep.
And what a time to change up the coach and bring in a rebuild coach as well.
And what a time to potentially get Long Island native James Higgins, who was the presumptive first overall pick before the season started. Then you get the actual first overall pick in Schaefer, and you set yourself up real well to potentially win the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, which could be franchise altering in the same way that McDavid was for the Oilers. Pretty incredible concept. I have one question now that we've entered Barzal into the fray. Fourth overall for Noah Dobson. Maybe we talked about that. Would you rather do fourth overall for Noah Dobson or fourth overall for Matthew Barzal?
I'll take this one away. Barzal being a 2015 draft class, same year as Connor McDavid, puts him a year older than Keller and Sergachev, so he still would fit in that core. But Dobson only being 24 is a huge benefit there. And it helps the stacking that BA loves a little bit more so than Barzal, who may be coming out of his prime by the time the Tej and the Boots and the Simichevs are going into their prime, where Dobson's probably going to be able to straddle the Keller core and the Daniil Boot Tej core a little bit better, and provide top play for longer on this team.
And
so
we talked about the height of the blue line.
Yes.
Yeah, and we talked about the height of the blue line. Outside of Simichev, Dobson would be the youngest. He's younger than Kesselring. He's younger than Sergachev. He's younger than who knows about Dursey. Yeah, he's only just turned 25. Sergachev 26, Dursey 26, Marino 27, Cole 36, Mata 30, Kesselring 25. For Tucson, he's not coming back, but he'd be the youngest outside of Simichev, who might be a seventh. He might be in Tucson. So
interesting.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. And you could, like you said, balance some pieces. I mean, if you're losing Dursey and you're bringing in Dobson, you still have some pieces that you could part with in the prospect pool for defense. Maybe if it's something like number 4 and Dursey and Duda for Dobson and Horvat or something like that. There's ways you could balance it that could be appealing to the Islanders. Given the position that they're in. Yeah. So that's a really interesting concept for me. That's a lot more thought-provoking than 4 for Dobson, which for me is a pretty quick no thanks.
So Dobson just a real quick side tangent as well. What a mentor for another prospect from the queue in the pipeline, Thomas Lavoie. As he's coming up to be able to kind of bounce ideas off somebody else who's done it. Another big right-hand two-way defenseman. Oof.
Playing in the Maritimes.
Thomas Lavoie. Yeah, playing in the Maritimes. And yeah, if you haven't checked it out already, we interviewed Thomas Lavoie back in
January-ish.
January-ish. Yeah. So make sure you check out that episode.
Friend of the show, Thomas Lavoie. Yeah.
Turned a lot of heads this year. All right. I want to see what you guys think. Let's go through it one by one. Let's stick with this original proposal of 4th overall for Noah Dobson. Corey, would you do it on a scale of 1 to 10? How do you feel about it? 1, you're crying and throwing your computer at the wall. 10, you got the I'm blanking on the horn, the plastic soccer horns.
Vuvuzela.
Yeah,
Vuvuzela. You're pulling it out and dancing down the street with it and waking up all the neighbors.
I would say about a 4. And as solid as Dobson is, an idea of having 2 number 1 defensemen, we don't really have a need at right defense. In fact, we already have kind of 1 extra body with Mavliam coming. So I think we have bigger fish to fry. We need that second line center. We need some offensive additions on the wing. Now, if I knew this, we could kind of put a couple of deals together where if you do the Dobson deal, then a couple of other things fall into place and you can flip Dursey for one of those needs, a center or a wing, then that 4 would be much higher. I actually had a look at Minnesota's depth chart to see if they needed a right shot defenseman. We got to talk about Marco Rossi in every episode. They don't need one though. They have Spurgeon and they have Brock Faber, so they don't need Dursey.
A little bit older, but yeah.
And until Rossi is traded, he's getting mentioned every episode.
We know.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get his agent on for the Rossi episode of this.
I had to look up to see if we have any of his clients on Utah, and we do. So there's some familiarity there. So,
Trent, how about you? Scale 1 to 10, just the 4th overall Dobson version of this trade. How comfortable would you feel with that?
I'd be pretty disappointed and confused if there wasn't a follow-up deal. Right. So when we drafted Cole Baudouin, we were like, oh, man, and TJ Ginley, like that's 2 forwards, but we have this blue line problem where nobody's under contract. Like this is a little confusing. Like I like TJ Ginley. I like Cole Baudouin. These are great draft picks, but I'm a little confused. You'll remember at the draft party, we were kind of standing around like, I wonder what old Bill Armstrong's got up his sleeve. And then first thing in the morning, we woke up and they acquired John Marino and Mikhail Sergachev in like the span of 1 hour. Like, now it makes sense. So if this were to be the reverse of that, where the trade comes on draft day, and then the follow-up fireworks come afterward, then I could bring myself around to it, right? I'm not, emotionally attached to this number 4 overall pick or anything like that.
That we didn't have 3 weeks ago.
Exactly. We didn't go through the pain and suffering for it. So I'm probably not throwing my computer or anything like that, but I'm probably waiting on bated breath, trying to determine what it is that Bill Armstrong has up his sleeve as a subsequent domino deal as a follow-up to this Dobson deal. So I would say it hit me like a 2 or a 3, and then I'd be anxiously awaiting what comes next, because I would think a subsequent move would have to come to fruition in short order for that to make any sense at all.
Sure. I think for me, the quality of the player in Noah Dobson, I would rank this maybe closer to a 6. I think I would be pretty happy with having Dobson on this roster, what it could mean for pushing for the playoffs now. Also, kind of with the caveat that we've seen BA work his magic before, and generally that means there's a follow-up move too. If there wasn't a follow-up move, maybe I'm a little bit more disappointed, but I think the quality of player getting there, I when I started digging into Noah Dobson a little bit more today, just to kind of have some of the stats ready to go and whatnot, I forgot how big he is, and I forgot that he is only 24. So those pieces, those qualities are pretty intriguing. the flip side of that is I do think I would be pretty disappointed with the idea of that prospect, the blue chip prospect pipeline potentially coming to an end. And again, when you look at that list of players selected at the 4th overall, I think it is very risky. So overall, I think I would have to put it in that 4 bin as well, where I'd prefer to draft a player at 4. I don't think defense is the major concern, concerning this team ended 21st for goals for per game played last season. We definitely need some scoring help. And obviously the fit means there's some right-hand defensemen that are getting pushed down the lineup, and you are pretty much at the point where you have to do something with it. So don't think I would be screaming. Don't think I would be throwing the computer or having a fit, but I wouldn't be shooting off fireworks down the street just yet.
That list of 4th overall picks you put up, how many were on it again?
16, just because.
And how many would you rank above Dobson? Probably 5, maybe, potentially. Some of them are still potential, like Will Smith, Luke Hughes, Lucas Raymond, maybe Brady Tkachuk, Kel McCarr. Like probably not more than 5 or 6, right?
Brady, Kale, Mitch Marner. I think Seth Jones at the time when he was drafted, I would have probably put above Noah Dobson. Like that ceiling that Seth Jones potentially could have had, and even some of his best years, I think is around what you're getting from Dobson. But I think Dobson may have a little bit better longevity. I don't know if Seth Jones just kind of got screwed with the trades. And then Luke Hughes, maybe Raymond's maybe right there as a 80. Did he have 80 points this year in the 80s?
And then Will Smith could potentially get there, right?
So
what I'm
driving
at there is, he's probably in the top 3rd of that list, which you're really mitigating a lot of the risk, right? You know, they say the draft is a crapshoot. There are some outright busts on that list too. And Noah Dobson's almost certainly not going to be an outright bust. So there is that risk mitigation piece too, where you're getting the sure thing rather than potentially, winning the lottery and then coming up snake eyes on the next roll when you actually make the selection, right? Yeah.
Yep.
But would you do the Horvat deal? Yeah, the 2 for 2.
That one really would make me think yes.
So my difficulty with that one is I go back to what you said about the bookends as far as the rebuild, because I mean, we would still have the 2026 first, but that's essentially it. Again, Beaudoin are coming, and then we have some other like Matica and Moreau's and whatever, but not real difference makers. So like this would be our lineup. You can see this. Okay. So like, can this team, I put question marks beside Krause and Schmaltz. I mean, Schmaltz is done after this year.
Move it over to your left a touch, Corey.
There we go.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
So
pack it out a little bit. There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
So like this would be the extent of it. Who knows where Schmaltz is, because his deal is up at the end of this coming season. Krause has a couple years left, but who knows? Like this would be the extent of it. Can this lineup win a Stanley Cup? I mean, otherwise, I guess you can trade deadline additions, free agency, that sort of thing, but there wouldn't be anything else coming from a pipeline perspective, because we're going to be drafting in the 20s from here on out. So that would be my concern here, where, I mean, Horvat is 30, where, I mean, at least if you bring in, and it doesn't even have to be Marco Rossi, but if you bring in a younger center, it gives you a little bit more timeline to try and bring in a championship. So that would be my concern there. Dursey
probably comes down to how confident you are in Hayton. Probably comes down to how confident you are in Hayton there.
I guess you could switch them. You could do Hayton as your second and Horvat long term when he gets a little. He can be your 3C. But I'm actually gonna mail this to Bill Armstrong, just some ideas.
Cost a fortune from Canada. We know how much postage is getting international there. Holy smokes! Try mailing a T-shirt to somebody. Jeez.
Make sure you're right about the Dobson part of that, though. We don't need him moving the 4th for just Horvat. Got this fan mail that really made me think. Awesome. Well, that was fun. Again, make sure you are liking and subscribing Clean Hits Hockey on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify and Apple, because we're going to start doing this every week up until the draft and into free agency. Let us know some ideas down in the comment section. Let us know what you think about the 4th overall for Dobson, or that expanded one with Horvat. How close are we? How far off are we? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let us know. And don't forget to be following us on Twitter, Instagram. Both of those are going to be Clean Hits Hockey. And you can find us at our Discord, where we chat about this stuff all day at discord.cleanhitshockey.com. Also, great way to support the show is grabbing some of our shirts. Of course, we have things like our very own left-hand elite defenseman, Sergachev, Mr. Versatile, Mr. Clayton Keller himself. Or if you can't wait for your Mammoth gear to get in, you can grab one of our Mammoth Club shirts already, which is a nice little play on that Pittsburgh Classic Penguins logo. And of course, you can get the same shirt that Dylan Gunther has, our Dylan Gunther Costco Club membership card. All that can be found at shop.cleanhitshockey.com. Again, I am Brad. We had Corey, Trent here. This is Quick Hits, this or that. We'll be back next week with more fun little debates. All right. Adios, guys.